line tonight. We are continuing the conversation about how we made it out here to Omaha, and how we got started with the church and where all of that is going. So I think last week when we wrapped up, we had finally gotten to the point to where we got on the road, and was able to tell everybody about just kind of the process and the very eventful morning that we left, leaving without having all of the resources that we needed to be able to get here, and the Lord blessing us with what we needed along that way. So I guess we can, we got a lot to cover tonight, but I think we can start talking about just kind of your thoughts and your feelings about the journey, about the drive out here, and just kind of how you were feeling that morning of, or even that day before, but just kind of coming down to the day that we actually got on the road and moved.
So I would say I was very excited because we were getting ready to start a new chapter in our life, and we were closing an old chapter. And a little bit of excitement, a little bit of anxiousness, and a little bit of fear rose up because I didn't know what was ahead. On top of, we had two very small children that we were traveling with in the car, and having to make sure, that I stayed awake to make that journey, because it was just myself and my god sister who were driving, and Jonathan was driving ahead. So all of that played a large part in my brain. But I think as we continued on the journey here, I got a lot of time to meditate and think about, where God was taking us. And during that time, God calmed and gave me peace. And so I no longer had the fear that I started out with on the journey. But as we got closer and closer to our exit, the peace that came over me was unreal, y'all. And I didn't know what was going on in the van or anything like that. I knew that we were moving. And the kids were phenomenal during the whole time. We didn't have any trouble. They had snacks galore because our church family, made sure that the kids were taken care of when it came to snacks and food and games and everything else.
Y'all had snacks galore?
Oh.
Where was all my snacks?
I gave you snacks, didn't I? I packed you a little bag of snacks.
No, there was no snacks in the moving van. Anyway, go ahead.
Anywho, but yeah, so yeah, once we got closer and we literally pulled up to the place, I was at peace. I was like, let's go, game on. That's how I felt. See, I wrapped it
Pulled
up.
Up to what place?
Pulled up to the house.
Oh. So we had talked last week just about kind of how we ended up in the first home that we stayed in here in Nebraska, and just how the Lord blessed us and connecting us with Rick and Fran.
Mm-hmm.
They were really, really cool, really great people.
Mm-hmm.
Actually still try to check in on Rick and Fran once a year to see how see how they're doing, see how things are going. But we were blessed. So let's see if we can get through like that first year in like the next 10 minutes. We were blessed again, and we've talked about this before, but we were really blessed when we moved into that house that Anthony lived right around the corner, like literally walking distance. And that was really huge for us moving into a place that we didn't know anything about. He was a great resource. Of course, he had been here for a year before and had the opportunity to kind of get around and to learn different things. And so he was a tremendous blessing for us that first year. I mean, not only the first year that we were here, but I mean, really for the entire time that his stay in Omaha overlapped with our stay in Omaha. But especially that first year. And it was interesting, of course, being out here and us, like, like I mentioned before, just making that switch to me being home and homeschooling the kids, and Jene leaving to go to work. So talk a little bit about your first job, how long it lasted, and then talk about your second job and how long that lasted. And yeah,
it's so interesting when people ask me, like, what in the world? And for my last job, I'll work my way back. For my last job that I interviewed for,
start at the beginning and work your way through.
Okay, never mind. I'll start at the beginning and work my way through. Thank you, Jonathan. But anywho, so the first job that I got here in Nebraska was not in Omaha. It was in Lincoln. It was for the University of Lincoln.
University of Nebraska.
Yes,
Lincoln.
The University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Their child care facility that they had on campus for their like the professors and things like that. And so I started working there. And every morning I would literally have to get up at like 4 a.m. Just to make sure that I was there on time. I had to be at work by 8 or 7-ish, 7:30. That's teachers, 7:30, get your classroom straight, and then 8 o'clock be ready to receive children. And so I had to make sure that I was on the road because I didn't know what traffic looked like. I didn't know, I knew it took like 45 minutes, but for me, not knowing where I was going the first time go around, I left earlier. But anyway, so that drive was a killer for me. I think within the second week, I was over it. Actually, the first week I was over it. And then I told myself, Jene, you have to get through this because your family is depending on you. And so all in the meantime, I'm like struggling with this drive, having to get up so early, not seeing my children. So going from being there to see my children, get up, eat breakfast, feed them dinner, being able to interact with them, to going to not seeing them at all until the weekend. So Jonathan and I did a role reversal where he had that same experience when he was working in youth ministry. And I was having this same experience right now. And so I knew that job was not going to last. I love teaching, but I knew that traveling like that and spending more time with other people's children was not where I wanted to be. And so I started searching for another place. Of course, when you move to Nebraska, it's very difficult to find a job when you're outside of, you're not a Nebraskan per se. So it took a long time for me to get that job. And I knew that I had to hold on to that job until I found something else. So I found something else, interviewed, got the job right on the spot like I did the other one. And they were like, where have you been? And I had a very special class, and a very special task that I usually get when I am a teacher. And so God allowed me to use my gifts and my talents and the spirit that I come in. Everybody that knows me, I'm a very happy-go-lucky person. Easygoing, but I do have organization that needs to happen in order for me to function and in order for you to be happy. And so I had to, again, wake up early, leave my kids, not see them until later. But this time I was able to tuck them in bed. But being away from them, it took a lot from me. And it took that particular class took a lot of energy out of me, where I didn't have any energy to give my own children. A long time ago, before marrying Jonathan and having children, I could deal with some stuff like that as a teacher, but it's totally different when you have your own children and you have a husband. It's totally different. So anywho, I stayed my course, but I knew that was not the place that I needed to be. So the first job I left within 3 weeks.
A month.
Okay. Yeah, a month. It felt like 3. I left within a month, started the new job that was closer to home in Omaha, and literally knew the 3rd week that I was there that I was not going to be there for much longer, and then started having those conversations with the director about leaving. She cried. To this day, we still talk. I talk to all of my past employees. But yeah, to this day, we still talk. And she cried and she said, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm really sure." I felt like I did all that I could do in that space. And God was saying, "Yeah, it's time for you to do bigger and greater things. You've accomplished what you needed to accomplish in this space. So this journey right here has stopped." And so I started looking.
Lawrence Stokes, what up, brother?
Lawrence, our DJ from our wedding. Hey, boo.
Did you just call him boo?
I mean, I call a lot of people boo, but you my honey. I love you. Okay. Back to my story. So yeah, I knew that my journey was up. And I had to share it with my parents. In the short amount of time that I was there, I developed some very close relationships with my students, with my assistants, with the staff there.
You're not funny, Elisa.
With with my parents. So it was very difficult for them to hear that I was leaving. It was a lot of transition going on with that particular class, and not stable wise. And this was the first for me that class had to be stable and to form those relationships, to form those bonds outside of school, making sure like parents were good, all that stuff. And so it was very hard.
We were supposed to get through the first year in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Okay.
We're still on the first 3 months.
You talking and still interrupting me. Let's finish.
Your mother told me to suck it up. I don't know what I'm supposed to be.
Anywho, stop talking. And so yeah, so it was difficult for me to leave them. Like a couple of my kids, like they just boohoo, broke down and cried. Anywho, I left that job, and I started a job with the wonderful Nebraska Department of Education Office of Early Childhood. And it has been a journey. Each job presents its challenges, but also gives me more insight into who I am and who God created me to be. And I love the fact that when I got to the interview, I was so nervous because I was like, okay, I don't know which door to go to through or what. But they were very laid and calm and laid back. And we got through the interview, and I noticed that they looked at, the resume as to how many jobs you have. And so my department head, she said, "So can you explain the either the long distance between starting in Virginia to now?" And so I kind of explained to her, wanted to, spend time with my children and help them grow, instead of pouring all into everybody else's children. And then when I got here, I told her about the story about traveling and, you know, wanting to do something more, and knew I didn't want to spend that time with other people's kids again, not, you know, being on the road and not seeing my own children. So she understood that. And she laughed. But for that journey, I would say I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I am doing something that I feel like I am making an impact with not just Omaha, but the entire state. So oftentimes I felt like in the beginning, first 2 years, I felt like I needed to do more for my community, North Omaha community. But I realized that in order for me to get to my North Omaha community, I had to start working on the outside so that it could start building rapport and getting buy-in, so that I could pull those different partners together so that change could start to happen. So I knew that there was a process in that. And you know, my coworkers will tell you, and even my department head, my boss will tell you, I like people at the table who want to see change and be a part of the conversation. So yeah, um, he gets on my nerves. Courtney, come get him. Anywho, so yeah, I am still with the department. I am loving it. I love being able to work with childcare providers. Like, I knew that I was supposed to be a teacher, but I also knew that I had a greater calling than just being in a classroom with students. You know, having a greater impact, which is touching the lives of people who touch the lives of children and make their life better. So yeah.
That is really I mean, it's an amazing story when you think about all of the different Lisa said she said I didn't even get the most comfy blanket. um but I mean, just all of those moves and all of those adjustments, I think it's all a testament to just your faith through that process. And I talk all the time, just because I get to be listed on the paper as the visionary and the founder of the church. A lot of times people will make it seem like my faith is so much greater than everybody else's, but the truth of the matter is, I mean, we all on our own journeys and on our own paths, we all have major moments of faith, major moments that require faith in our lives, and making that move, and you being willing to go back to work so that I could stay home and begin planning and preparing for the church and learning about the community and things of that nature. I mean, that was a major faith step. Finding a job in a brand new place, first job being an hour drive away from the house. And, we already talked last week just about, her making that drive in our 99 Lincoln Navigator, and having to put $65 in gas in that thing like every 3 days because of that round trip. And she wasn't even making a whole lot of money at the time, but literally half of the income was going towards gas and maintenance on the. You can't read now because you got.
I got my glasses on. I can see.
She said, "All I know is y'all better not plan to leave Omaha and give us only a week's notice. That will be a problem." LOL. It's customary to provide 2 weeks notice, but yeah. So. I mean, being willing to do that. And I mean, even with all the changes, all the challenges that we experienced, I remember that weekend that the alternator went out and it was cold and had to go out there and, replace the alternator in the truck. And
then having Anthony there, which was amazing because he allowed us to use his car. for me to travel sometimes.
You're absolutely right, Heather.
To travel to work. So
Yeah. Yeah, but I won't. I don't think I'll ever forget just the day that we had the conversation about your job at UNL, and the day that you told me that you didn't think you could do that anymore, and I knew how rough it was, and I was actually glad, because I was actually praying for you that the Lord would open another door, because I didn't like the idea of you having to make that drive once winter came. And so it was, I mean, God was really really favorable in that we were only here, for a month, so August into September, until you were able to get that other position at Primrose. And and then being much, at least being in Omaha, albeit West Omaha, like 20-25 minute drive, um much closer, but still a ways away. And um and I was really excited when you talked about applying for the position with the state, because just knowing your desire to not only impact children but to impact families, knowing that families impact children, and it was a great opportunity. Glad that you took advantage of it. And I think even all these years later, you see a lot of the fruit from what you've been able to do in that position. And I think what's really interesting about that is, sometimes I just sit and I'm like, well, what if we had never left Virginia? And I think it's fair to say that you would have never been in your position that you have now in Nebraska. You would have never been in that position in Virginia, because Virginia is a lot more political, a lot more exclusionary. And so it's beautiful to see how, I think, for Jene, just making that leap in faith to support me in the pursuit of the vision that God had given me, how that opened up doors for her to be in the space that God had for her. And and I say this as an encouragement to those of you that are married, that are considering marriage, that are considering any kind of committed partnership union. There's a lot of stuff that floats around about submission, and a lot of misunderstandings and misinterpretations about submission. And I say this every now and then at the church, but I think it's really important for us to understand that in a relationship, submission isn't about you bringing me my food and bringing me my slippers and bringing me the paper. And it's funny because we started watching WandaVision on Disney Plus, and they start off with like these, like a 50s type show, and then like a 60s type show, and then like a 70s type show. And it's not funny, but it's really sad to look back at the social perception of the marriage relationship, and just the dominance of the man and the subservience of the woman, and how how women were treated and perceived during that time as nothing more than a maid or a servant to the man. Yeah. And but those same kind of mindsets and thoughts about submission still, some people still believe that stuff. And and I believe that there are spiritual blessings when we submit, but it's not like that. It's not that slave mentality. It's not that servant mentality. It is when we literally take our mission and we bring that under, we make it a submission of a broader mission. And I believe that in marriage that God blesses wives when they not just submit to their husbands and just become slaves, but when they bring their mission and make it a submission of the mission of the household. And for Jene, she gave up everything to move over here in support of the vision that God had given me to plant Church on Purpose. But in the process, the Lord was able to make way and open doors and create opportunities for her to be able to do what he made her and created her to do. And and even through the church itself, today she is able to has created space for her to begin providing ministry in other areas with the ministry that she does with women now, hosting conferences and other events and things of that nature. Because she was willing to bring her mission under the mission and the vision of Church on Purpose that God gave us. And so, I hope that is empowering for you, because the responsibility, falls on the man in the relationship, not to be the dictator, but to be the protector and the provider. And not saying that like I'm the only one that works and, makes money and, breadwinner type stuff. But it means that the work that I do with my life ought to be creating and making space for her to do the work that she does in her life. That what I do ought to be providing space and providing resources for her to be able to do what it is God has called her to do. And and I think that there's a lot of fruit that you've been able to see in your life that you wouldn't have necessarily seen if we had stayed where we were. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. I think also I failed to mention, grab that book, The Battle Plan for Prayer. So at the second job, I'll say, at the second job, my mom, before I left, gifted me this book right here. And I didn't read it at all. So I decided at the second job, I said, Lord, it's got to be something better. And so I started reading this book. And in this book, it walks you through different prayers, and it walks you through a journey. And this book literally spoke to me where I was at the time. And it allowed me to open up my prayer life. Sometimes we don't realize how small our prayer life is until you start reading about your prayer life, like what it should be, what it should entail, and things like that. And so I started doing that, and literally when I started doing that, God started really speaking to me, and then the job opened up. And then you know how the devil starts playing with you, because now you have the confidence that you need to do what God is calling you to do. And I fill out this application, and I'm like on the fence, and I'm like, Lord, this is really a really good job for the Department of Education. And little old me, like, okay, I have a master's degree, in educational leadership. I have, a bachelor's degree, but is it everything that I need? And so you start second guessing yourself, dealing with that confidence thing. And then your confidence starts dropping. And then I open this book back up, and it's like, no, that's the enemy talking to you. I've given you all the tools that you need. Let's go on and do what you have been called to do. And so that's exactly what I did. And this book helped me. So if you want to go out and get it, there it is. And it has places in there where you can write in there too as well. All right, I'm done.
We miss you too, Miss Kathy.
Hey, Miss Kathy.
It's a great book, Karen. You can definitely pick that up. What up, May?
Just going through.
Yep, just going through the recent comments. And indeed. So you finally make it back to you still have to drive to La Vista or whatever, but
it's not that bad.
Make it into a settled position where you feel like you are able to make the impact that you desire to make. And even though you're working for the state, you still use that time to connect with and find opportunities to serve childcare providers in North Omaha. And I appreciate, like, along your journey, just the intentionality that you have had with finding ways to be a resource to our community. And that's been beautiful along the way, because of course that first year was about learning about Omaha, and taking all of the things that have been shared with us in conversation and really beginning to piece things together and make the connections and see what the deal is, and kind of form our own perception and perspective on what community life was like. And so, for me, it was a lot of searching. They're asking for who the author of the book is.
This is inspired by the featured film War Room. And so Kindred, I'll give that book. You can take a picture of it. See it? That's the. I'm pretty sure you can find it on Amazon too.
Yeah. But a lot of that first year was just trying to learn about the community, trying to connect and trying to build relationships. And interestingly enough, just not feeling, you're not wanting to just be at home and not contribute financially to the household. Before we left Virginia, with Quentin and Chris, we had started the plans for kicking off our own network marketing company. And so part of that first year was spent in development and preparation for the launch of that company. And then in January, actually launching the company. And I mean, it's really crazy just how God really brings all of these things into play. Miss Kathy. So I see your question there. How did Omaha come into play? So we actually have a series of these videos, and we talked about that one in the video 2 weeks ago. So you can find that in the archives there on the Facebook page, and we'll pull them all together and put them into a series so that they're easier to find. But we did a whole video on how Omaha popped up that you can check out. But we were able to make some really meaningful connections and establish some brand new relationships here in the community through the network marketing initiative. One of the great advocates and supporters of Church on Purpose, Gary Elliston. You'll see a picture of him here in a little bit, but connected with him through network marketing. Michelle Chapman, who is you're going to find out about in a little bit, just like how significant of a role she played, and has played, is playing, and will play,
still
in our lives here in Omaha, and just kind of what the Lord is doing, and just how she's been a blessing to us. But Ronnie Swift and Eris Mackey, we're able to build some really great relationships and make some really great connections, while still learning about the community and getting out here and building relationships and connecting with people and identifying different perspectives. It was a really interesting year, but it was a good year. And we were able to kind of get into a routine with the kids at the house, and David and Jada are older right now, and so I'm sure if you ask them, like, what is the favorite time of their childhood growing up, and it's going to be when Daddy was homeschooling them, and all of the trauma that he inflicted in their lives during that time, and how grateful they were that that David ended up getting admitted to Nelson Mandela Elementary School.
He was so happy.
He was so happy that he didn't do anything. He just stood still and smiled. But it was an amazing year. I'm trying to abbreviate this so that we can make some moves. But it was definitely a year where, like, moving away from everything, it was a year that finally put us in the same space as a family. Because, like we've talked about before, our lives in Virginia were just like so hectic. We were always on the go, always moving from one thing to the next thing, and didn't really ever have a lot of time to just be together. And that first year, really forced us into the same space, and kept us tight, kept us close. And it was really necessary, because we didn't we kind of touched on this a little bit before, but and didn't go deep into it, and don't really have time to go deep into it tonight. But even when we got ready to relocate, it was a really, really tough and really tense time in our marriage. And there were times where I was like, you know what, she gonna wake up today and be like, you go head on, and I'll stay here. Because it was tough.
Like that,
It was tough. And we talked before moving just about relocating kind of being an opportunity for us to start fresh and to leave some stuff behind in Omaha. And in some places we did, and in other places we didn't. But really that first year being in that space, and it just being the four of us, me, Jene, David, and Jada, it really forced us into, you can't run away from stuff when you are, when you have nowhere to go.
Have those conversations.
Yeah.
Those difficult conversations.
And not that first year, absolved and resolved everything, but it was significant into helping us to find new footing for our relationship. And it's amazing how just how God uses different stages and different phases of our lives to work on and address things that we not even thinking about, and that we're not planning on. Like, the whole idea was to move out here to start a church, not to move out here to fix our marriage, or to move out here to to transform careers and and all of those kind of things. But in the process of pursuing the purpose that God has for us and chasing the vision that he's placed in our hearts, the Lord provides along our path the opportunities to do the things that we need to do to become the people that we need to become in order to do the things that he's calling us to do. And it was really crazy just how much he was especially during that first year, that he was really working on the internal me. And I can't speak for you because I'm not you, but especially on during that first year, like, there was a lot of work that was taking place on Jonathan, and just kind of overcoming, working through some fears, overcoming some fears, being faced with the reality of who I was and how I need to grow. And I believe that the Lord, really walked me through that humbling experience because of the kind of pastor I needed to be for the work that I was going to do in this community. Because what I ended up finding out during that first year was that depending on who you're talking to in Omaha, Nebraska, there are a lot of different perceptions about the church. And there are those that have a great relationship with the church, love the church, been a part of the church, promote the church and what the church does, love the church. But then there's another segment of our community that is super frustrated with church and with how church operates and what church does and how church people act and what the church don't do and where the church isn't present and all of those kind of things. And we knew that God calling us out here, that he wasn't calling us to be poachers of other of other churches. Like, we weren't coming out here to start a church with members from other people's churches. But the Lord was calling us to be unique in our connection with people that weren't already connected to a church body. And we've always been very clear about that. Like, we're not out here trying to snatch members from other churches. We're not recruiting people from other churches. We are trying to identify, connect with, and build relationships with people that are disconnected from the local assembly, that aren't a part of a fellowship, that don't have the support and the relationship and the love that they need along their journey to make their journey everything that God desires it to be. And so, so it was, I really feel like the Lord just really exposed me to me that first year and was like, dude, this is so that you never forget that you ain't no different than anybody that you have the opportunity to serve. just because just because you've been saved, just because you moved across the country to plant a church, just because you heard me speak to you, just because you responded in obedience, just because you did all these things, it don't make you no spiritual superstar. Your responsibility is still to serve, because you still need to be served, because you ain't perfect.
Yeah.
And the Lord is, and I'm still working on you as I'm trying to work through you. And I'm grateful because, I feel like I hope, at least, my prayer is that the perception is, that is the kind of servant leader that I've been in the time that we've been here in Omaha. There was no desire to come out and, with a bunch of flyers and billboards and shout to the rooftops that, that we were doing what we were doing, that we were planting the church and all that kind of stuff. It was, Lord, how do we demonstrate to people that we're not here for a show, but that we're legitimately here in this community to serve. And and it became very clear, like, if you want people to see you as a servant, you got to serve.
Right.
And so, so one of the ways that we started kind of inserting ourselves in the community was by finding opportunities to engage in service. And one of those was at the Omaha Teen Summit. That was the first time that I ever partnered with an organization and went out to serve. And that was that was 5 years ago. So this year will be the 5th year that I will have had the opportunity to serve and to be a part of the Omaha Teen Summit, that is sponsored by the Black Police Officers Association, and been able to build great relationships with those brothers too. I mean, they're phenomenal guys. Sponsored by the Black Police Officers Association and the Brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. But they're all such great guys, and they love our kids, and they do such great work. A lot of times that goes unrecognized. But having the opportunity to be able to work with them and connect with them was really kind of my first taste of getting connected to authentic Omaha. And so then, from there, it was just finding additional opportunities to be able to plug in and to serve, because it's amazing what you see when you are not in the spotlight. And when you just hang in the shadows and you can sit back and you can observe and you can watch people and watch interactions. I learned a lot that first year just by serving, by finding ways, finding places and spaces to be able to insert myself in. And I believe that, as we kind of came around and we started talking more about the church and kind of what we were here to do, I think it has always caused people to look at us differently. Because most people's initial interaction with us is with us in some kind of service capacity. They don't get a billboard, they don't get a flyer, they don't get a mailer or anything like that. When people connect with Church on Purpose, 9 times out of 10, it is through an act of service. And I'm grateful for that reputation that we've been able to build. But that was the mandate that God gave us when we moved here, was, again, not to come out here thinking that we know everything and that we have all of the answers and that we so perfect and everybody else is so done. Like, that's obviously not the case. Like, we're not here to be the only ones that are doing kingdom work in Omaha, but we're here to do our part in partnership with others that are doing kingdom work in Omaha. And I think, even that first Thanksgiving that we were here, Big Mama invited us, since it was going to be our first Thanksgiving away from family. She invited us to Thanksgiving with her family. And
I think that was so special.
Yeah, it was awesome. And your mom, of course, came out and was with us that first Thanksgiving. And
that's when she agreed that she was not coming back in November. After the winter months, she would be back.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And we met Pastor Dwayne Hawkins of Antioch Baptist Church at that Thanksgiving dinner. And it's a whole other story just to talk about how much of a blessing he's been to Church on Purpose and to me as a growing pastor over the years. It's just been amazing to see how intentional God has been about our process, and just how he has demonstrated his love through people here in Omaha that didn't know us from anybody. But just saw some younger folk at the time who were
still young,
new to the community, and but trying to be genuine, trying to be authentic, and trying to serve. And so, kind of moving through that first year, there was a lot of planning and preparation for what starting the church was going to look like. And then, of course, we told you last week, of course, that Quentin and Priscilla had made the profession that they wanted to come out and help us to get things started with the church as well. And so, there was also a lot of conversations, for them about, what that transition was going to look like.
Hey,
And yeah, what up, dude? He heard that quote. God bless you, Miss Kathy. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Sorry, go ahead.
And you're absolutely right. It's always about his focus. But we were having conversations, of course, about what it was going to look like and what their transition was going to look like and all of those things. And love you too, dude. And looking forward to your next journey back to the O. And so they actually, at the end of our first year, we knew that, the whole point of moving where we moved was so that, and it being temporary, was so that we could get in the community and find out where we wanted to live. Mm-hmm. After being out here for some time, we knew that we believed that God was calling us to North Omaha. And so we knew that if that's where we were going to be serving, that's where we need to live. Like, we needed to be living in the community that we had a desire to serve. And so actually ended up finding this house, the house that we are in now, through our relationship with Michelle that, told you about, that we met through network marketing. And when I say, like, Jene pounced on this opportunity like a starving cheetah on the savannah with a lame antelope. I told her that Michelle said she had a house or whatever, and like within like 2-3 days we was out looking at the house, and then we like a month later we were living in it. So
it was beautiful. I walked in and I was like, this is it.
And and walking in, for me, it was all about knowing that we were trying, that we were here to start a church. And so we needed a space that was going to allow us to start church in our home, because of course, we weren't going to have the resources and the revenue to pay for something else. And so we knew that. And so, it ended up working out to where the house that we moved in was large enough to accommodate our family, but also able to provide space for Quentin and Priscilla when they first moved out as well. And so, when they moved out that following that August, a little over a year after we had moved, then they moved in with us. Now, interestingly enough, when we moved into this house, there was some work that was being done, and the roof was being replaced the first week that we were here. And so the day that they took the old roof off, of course, in a lot of cases, it's very rare that people will replace an entire roof in one day. Usually they'll come and they'll take the old roof off, they'll lay the paper down, and then they'll come back the next day with the shingles and they'll, finish the roof. And so, of course, we ended up having one of the worst series of thunderstorms the night that they took the roof off. And so was that our second week I think it was our second, either our first or second week in the house.
It was horrible.
It was our first week in the house. We had only been here a couple of days.
Yeah, because I couldn't sleep because of the lightning was like it was going to come through the window. I'm still not used to it.
Well, it was absolutely a blessing that that we had only been here a couple of days, because we still had a lot of stuff packed up. Because that night, when I tell you, like, it was horrible rain. It was like hurricane type stuff. Mm-hmm. It was so bad that, we out the window, like, you could see the clouds spinning. And of course, everybody's concerned with us coming to Nebraska was, oh, you in Tornado Alley, blah, 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 all that stuff. And so, like, you see the clouds doing crazy stuff and all this other stuff. But because we had no roof, like, water literally started pouring into the house. Mm-hmm. and I mean like waterfalls. Like, I have to go back
Monsoon.
through and pull up the video. It's on my Facebook page, like way down in the timeline though. But it was crazy. I was literally shoveling water out the front door of the house with a snow shovel because we had just moved. We didn't have anything. And so I'm in the front room. We done already took out all our towels and everything. And I'm in the front room in the middle of the night with the screen door open, pouring rain outside. And I'm shoveling water out the front door with a snow shovel. And it was like, okay, we're not going to take this as a sign that this is not where we're supposed to be. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Maybe as a sign it's going to rain down blessings.
And well, not to mention the fact that the power had gone out before that. So all of this was happening in the dark. And it's probably a good thing that it did go out because, you got water running down the walls and all that other kind of stuff. And so that would have been bad. But yeah, I mean, took like 45 minutes to get as much of the water out of the house as we could. But but again, like it was like, oh wow, this is just another crazy part of the journey, something else that we'll be able to tell people about
and laugh about it now. We weren't laughing then.
Well, you were laughing about it. I'm still not laughing about it because that day was crazy. And if you ain't never shoveled water with a snow shovel, then you ain't really had problems.
Ooh, honey.
No, I'm just kidding. That was the night David slept through all of that.
And I had to drag him down the steps.
That dude was knocked out.
And he's heavy.
Didn't wake up at all.
No.
He was out. But that was the first week that we were here, got all that stuff, straightened out or whatever. And then a couple of weeks later, Quentin and Priscilla moved out and they were able to kind of get in and get settled. And thank you, Miss Kathy. Miss Kathy said we passed the test. I don't ever want to take that test again.
No.
That test was, geez. Anyway, and so before that, I mean, once we identified the place and space that we were moving to, we was like, all right, boom, we might as well go ahead and start the church. And so we set October 2nd of 2016 as the date for our first service. And we started letting the individuals that we have been building relationships with know that we were getting ready to start the church that we had moved out here to, and that we were going to be meeting in our basement. And, so we started gearing up for that day. We spent that 30 days leading up to the service praying together, with our prayer calendar and just trying to get everything in order. We were really blessed. Our told you last week just about our friends Nathan and Danielle that let us use their garage to hold our stuff. Well, they also blessed us with a drum set. And so David had a drum set to play. We couldn't afford a keyboard at the time, so I had a guitar that I bought before, when we were still living in Virginia. And so I was learning the praise and worship songs on guitar, and it was really simple, really simple. But we got everything together, and we prepared for our first worship service here in this space. That's what the setup looked like for our first day of worship. Quentin and Priscilla brought additional furniture to put down in the basement. And so we, had the sectional couch down there, and then, we had the drum set, we had the guitar. I had my bass, even though I wasn't really playing it a lot at that time. And we had the podium, and we had the table with the church banner on it. That we got, that got printed up 2 days before. And we went for it. We did what we could do, and we planned as best we could. We prepared as best we could, and the Lord was really gracious to us on that day. We had a great service, and believe that people were blessed. We were fortunate. You see here, this is the crew at the end of the first service there. And, we had talked about Gary before. That's him there in the ball cap. And then, of course, Nicole and Cora, who both made decisions of faith that day,
Yeah.
and who are continuing to grow in their faith even today, which is super exciting. You see the little David there who just hated taking pictures. Could not stand taking pictures and always pouting at that time, but Jada always ready for a picture.
Team
and so
ready.
some things never change. You see Quentin and Priscilla there, and then William there in the back, which is a brother that Quentin had connected with when he got out here and invited to worship. This was our first Sunday. This was the conclusion of our first Sunday of worship. After church, we went to Lolo's.
Mm-hmm.
Chicken
and waffles.
Yep, we went to Lolo's and had dinner at Lolo's, just kind of as a celebration, because this was, for me, this was the end of a 10-day fast. I'm gonna tell you how much the Lord loves me. It was a 10-day complete fast. So no food, just water, nothing but water for those 10 days. And the morning of service, I think my body was like, all right, we finna eat today, because my intestines felt like they were a part of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. I mean, it was horrible, like to the point of where I didn't get much sleep. And it wasn't because of anything super spiritual. It was only because I was hungry. And so, we got through service, and then, like the intelligent faster that I am, I went directly from not eating for 10 days to eating chicken and waffles with a mason jar full of Kool-Aid at Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. And the Lord blessed me that I did not get sick or feel any kind of adverse effects from that. That was a bad idea. Please don't ever do that.
Do it.
That was dumb. And I don't think the Lord would give me that same measure of grace again. But it was a great day. It was a memorable day. And it was also kind of like the first time where I realized that that the Lord was truly doing something that was so much bigger than just me.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had moved us halfway across the country with a dream, and everything hadn't gone perfectly. Everything hadn't gone exactly the way that we wanted it to go every step of the way. But here we were, living the dream that had been a seed just a year earlier. And that was a really powerful, really special moment for me and it altered my faith. I won't say that it grew my faith, but I think it altered my faith to the point to where, and it's funny because I was talking with Gladys last week, and she was like, after last week's session, she called me, and she was like, so that's why every time I call you and I'm going through these faith crises and things like that, why you're always like, oh, okay. and honestly, like, it's because of all the things that I've seen God do, that, I mean, he really had no reason to do through me and for me and through us and for us. I know that God can do so much more than what we expect him to do. And so even when things look crazy, like, there's always a belief that God is up to something. Mm-hmm. And that in some way, shape, or form, if we just stay focused and we stay obedient, then that's something that he's up to is going to end up working to our benefit.
Right.
And I mean, it's happened so many times, just over and over and over again, as God has been guiding our steps along this journey, and really blessing us. And and I'll pause there to just kind of give you some space. Shut up now. Thank you for not taking the blanket and going to sleep on me, but
nope,
give you some space to be able to kind of share your thoughts about that first day of worship.
That first day, Priscilla and I got up early, set up, because we had the little sneak snacks.
Sneak snacks.
Yep, the sneak snacks.
Sneak snacks. Patty wax.
Anyway, we had the sneak snacks because I like my snacks, and Priscilla likes her snacks too. But yeah, so we had the set up for when people came in, they could grab like something to drink and all that. So in the process of doing that, we begin to pray. We began to intercede on those that would come that day, and pray for us that we would do God's will during that time. And I think that was a special bonding time for her and I, during that time, and pray that I didn't throw up because I was pregnant with Joseph. And so it was a lot of emotions. I was excited, I was nervous, I didn't know what to expect. And so after that prayer, I was good. I was like, okay, let's go downstairs and let's do this, but still having in mind that we were in our basement and we were leaving our door open for random people to come in my house. I was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. So we had this long conversation prior to about, how everybody was going to enter and all this other stuff. So we had to set up cameras so that it could help my faith. Well, not help my faith, but, kind of console me on the piece of security. And so, after the prayer with Priscilla on that day, I was calm. And I said, okay, whatever it is, it'll be okay. And so anyway, we had worship service and I was very excited. I'm always pregnant. Let me stop. But I was excited to see my first friend here in Nebraska, Nicole, and her daughter come to worship with me. I met Nicole at my second job here in Omaha, Nebraska. She was my assistant teacher, and she was amazing. And we oftentimes talked about faith and talking about, her purpose and what that really was, and for her to seek her purpose. And so when we told her about starting a church, she asked when. I told her when, and she showed up. So I was excited. But on that day, being able to see our son play the drums, us do worship service, just like we were in a big edifice. I mean, like we just worshiped him, was amazing. And then for her and her daughter to give their lives either back to Christ or, come to know Jesus was an amazing thing. And so there's a reason for your journey. You might not think you're where you're supposed to be, but when you think that, it's not where you're supposed to be, there are people that are entwined in where you are that need you there right there. So imagine if I was not there at that school at that time to just pour into her and encourage her, like she wouldn't have taken that faith journey. I mean, she might have taken it later on, but not at that point. So yeah, I was excited. I was excited.
I think that's a good point because, and ties in wonderfully with kind of how we started this conversation with recounting kind of your job pursuits and how you moved around during those first couple of months that we were here, because I think that Nicole, as much as of a blessing that you were to Nicole was equally exactly what you needed during that first year, because Anthony and I spent a lot of time hanging out, but you didn't really have another female protege until Nicole came along, and then you all were able to formulate that relationship and get together and do things and things like that. And I think that she ended up being a really valuable relationship for you, especially during that first year that we were here. And so it's awesome to kind of see how God used what looked like an insignificant stop in getting you to where you are in your job with the state. He used that seemingly insignificant stop to provide for you the relationship that you needed at that time, and also open the door for you to be able to provide the opportunity for a restored relationship for her. And I think sometimes that's why it's always interesting to me when people pray for a job and then they give their testimony, hey, I got the job, I'm all excited and all that kind of stuff. Because like some point down the road, they will be like, man, I can't stand this job trash, I hate this job, I don't even know why I'm here, they don't respect me, they don't love me, they don't care about me, all that kind of stuff. I can't wait to get out of here, because they breath stink and they they walk loud and all that other kind of stuff.
Lord,
You fat, you.
35.
So I'm gonna turn the channel.
I'm gonna turn the channel.
So, but I think, too often we are so quick to move beyond and try to get beyond where we are right now that we don't oftentimes slow down enough to be able to appreciate what God is connecting us to and preparing us with in the moment. And there were, a lot of moments like
Courtney,
that,
I know.
that, have been a blessing to us along this journey. And it's just been amazing to see how God has done what he's done, and just how that has manifested through the development of Church on Purpose. So, of course, so we're going to kind of speed through the rest of the years right now, because we've got about 20 minutes before we need to wrap. And, then, like I said, next week we have a very special segment that's going to kind of wrap up this series that we're excited to get to, but we can't get there unless, what up, Nikki?
Hey. Okay, go ahead.
The breath stinks. But we're going to kind of move through some of the different points along the way, and use it to kind of highlight some different things that have happened at the church over the years, in preparation to kind of wrap this up and get into our conversation next week. And so, here is the picture from our very first common meal.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really, since we moved out of the house, we haven't really had this common meal experience, because this, the original concept behind common meal was leveraging the opportunity of fellowship over food, which is what we learned from Big Mama.
Mm-hmm.
Leveraging that to build relationships with people who, again, didn't have relationships with established churches. And so it was an opportunity on a Sunday morning during our regular worship time to just get together and to worship, but to intentionally invite other people into that space, so that they could connect with the community. They could begin to build relationships with other people and know what they were connecting with once they got connected to worship. And so, it was always a beautiful moment, and sitting there looking at Jada sitting in that chair, just so small, man. Golly, like, and seeing Chris and Kim there, Darvell and Maddie, and Ian, and I mean, and of course William again, and it's amazing when we just pause to reflect on all of the amazing people here in Omaha that the Lord has given us the opportunity to connect with at some point in time along our journey. It truly is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And God is so amazing in that he has surrounded us with so many amazing people to support the work of Church on Purpose. And support looks different in so many different ways, but we talked about Pastor Dwayne Hawkins.
This was the new setup without the panel walls.
Yeah, so we started off here. This was the original setup, but then people started talking trash about the blue lights on the wood panel walls, and the TV in the background.
Just terrible.
And so we ended up rotating the room and updating the setup. And so for what we had and the space that we were operating with, and,
it was nice.
And what we did, I mean, like, we did some sweet stuff. The Lord bless us to be able to do some sweet stuff. So you see there that we upgraded and got a keyboard, and and added some additional lighting, and we were still using webcams at that time. But it was cool. It was a functional setup. And so this is the first time that Pastor Hawkins came to preach at Church on Purpose, and this was during Passion Week in I want to say 2017. He preached for our first midweek Passion Week service, and was a tremendous blessing to the church, and continues to be even, even to this day, just the ways that God has used him to be a blessing to our church family is ridiculous. And matter of fact, the series that we're going to be starting in March, where we start describing discipleship, describing membership, and describing leadership, and what all of those look like at Church on Purpose. He actually walked our leadership team through a 6-week series to help compile those the information that we're going to be sharing with you. And so, really excited about that, but so thankful for this brother and for just how much of a blessing he has been to us. And so, so we worship downstairs in that space until we started getting closer to our 1-year anniversary. And so we started having conversations because we were inviting folk and everything. And we knew it was going to be more people than we could hold in the basement. And so we made the decision to move church upstairs. And of course, remember, like, we're living in this house too. And so for that first 9 months, church was in the basement. We lived upstairs. And then after that 9 months, things flipped and we had to move the living space downstairs, and church came up to the main floor. And so for our first anniversary, our pastor from back home, Dr. Kirk Houston, he came out and he preached an amazing sermon titled "The Power of Doing Church on Purpose." And here's what's crazy. So when I was pulling this graphic off, I went back and I pulled this graphic from the video on YouTube, and I'm gonna end up posting all of the anniversary messages that we have been blessed with at Church on Purpose, because God, even today, is still speaking to us through those messages. And there was a portion of Dr. Houston's message where he talked about the phases and the stages of growth. And it's toward the end of the message, but I really hope that you all will take an opportunity to check that out when it's posted, because at the end of our first year, he already laid out what this journey was going to look like. And I wish I had been listening to this message more, because I probably would have been a lot less frustrated than I have been over the last couple of years. But what's amazing is that we are exactly where we are supposed to be. And when you listen to that message, you'll be as excited as I am about the stage that we're transitioning into next. And so, he blessed us tremendously that first weekend, that first anniversary that we had. And I think we squeezed 36 people into the living room for that service. I mean,
we had people in the balcony, which were the steps. And it got so hot in that jank, we had to open up the door, the patio door, so we can get some air circulating. But again, another memorable moment in the life of Church on Purpose. And then as we moved into the conclusion of our second year of service, then of course my father came out and he preached a letter of encouragement, which was so needed and so timely and so necessary at that moment in our growth and our development. And that was, that was our first service that was at a different location. Right. And we filled that one.
We rented out the hall so that we could hold that service. And that was when we kind of started thinking about the reality of moving out of the house. And what was likely going to be the need for us to start intentionally planning to move out of the living room. And and this message was so timely, because it was the encouragement that along the journey that's not necessarily going the way that you think it's going to go. That's where you're running into more and more roadblocks and hiccups than what you thought you were going to along the way. It was timely, it was necessary, it was needed for us to be able to stay focused on the work and not get distracted by the difficulty of the journey. And so, it was a memorable day. That was the day that we were able to present Big Mama's family with a token of our appreciation, for how she had blessed us as a church, because she played an integral role in who we are as a church, and will forever be a part of the history of our church. And we were glad to be able to have her family there to celebrate them, and to celebrate her commitment to the church. And matter of fact, if you go to Big Mama's, there is you can actually see some of the things that the church was able to present the family with, and Courtney Vaughn,
my God,
put this gift package together for the family that was absolutely amazing. That's right, Karen. The golden spatula. That's right. Y'all going off in the chat right now. And yeah, it was great. And yes, David is named after my father. But y'all shouting out Pastor Houston as well. We're gonna dip through these comments real quick. But yeah, it was a really powerful, really meaningful day. And of course, having the opportunity to have our pastor who commissioned us to come and do this work, to preach our first anniversary, and then having my father come out to preach our second anniversary. It's just always been such a huge blessing for us as a church. And then, of course, my great friend and brother, Marvin Gilliam, came out and he preached our third anniversary, which was the conclusion of a year of a lot of transition. We moved out of the house into the building, and we really started trying to figure out how to make things work in the building. And for a while there, I think the building became a distraction from our mission for a little bit, and we needed that opportunity to refocus on what the Lord was doing through us and what the Lord expected of us as a church.
Yeah.
And Marvin's word was super timely, for that third anniversary. Again, return on investment, just reminding us about, what all of this is about, and what the Lord expects of us as we continue to serve and lead his people here in this particular community. And then, of course, year 4 comes along and we get smacked with this thing called COVID. And, just trying to learn how to continue to serve God's people in a completely altered fashion. And it was a really, really difficult year. But it was also a year that exposed the need for the church to remember its calling to servanthood. And so for our 4th anniversary, my father came back, and in a virtual fashion, although here physically, for everybody else connecting virtually, he preached, he preached Called to Be Servants, and reminded us in the middle of, this this global pandemic, once in a generation pandemic, that God has called us to serve, and that as citizens in the kingdom, even in the middle of a global pandemic, it ain't about us. We're supposed to be finding opportunities to be able to connect with and to serve other people during that time, because that is that's the space that the Lord gives us to be able to share his love with the world. And just so many more nuggets that are contained within there. And we're excited because for our 5th anniversary, which is coming up, of course, the first weekend of October this year, Dr. Houston will be back to preach our 5th anniversary this year, and to be a blessing to us as we have continued to grow. And so we are so grateful and so blessed and so thankful for all of the amazing people that have poured into us through the years, because we know without a doubt that we wouldn't be here if we tried to do all of this in secret. We wouldn't be here if we tried to do all of this alone. But it has been the Lord providing through his people that has helped to bring us to this place, to this space where we are today, which is on the cusp, on the verge of something that is exciting and something that is transformative. And some of you all have been with us through, well, I guess you kind of the only person that's been there the entire journey.
Yes, I am.
So thank you
You're welcome.
for that. Others of you have been with us for a significant part of the journey. Quentin and Priscilla were there with us at the first service. Courtney came the following week and has been here ever since. And others of you came in the middle of the journey and and have jumped in just like you've been here the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And some of you are brand new to partnering with us on the journey, but again have jumped in like you've been here the entire time. And it is truly all of us here together, working together, that is going to make the difference. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how big the vision is.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the Lord has already done. The fact of the matter is there's still so much that he wants to do.
Yes.
And, and it's up to us to make ourselves available. Like, we sit here talking just, 4.5 years into the journey. And, it's cool to, to see people's comments about the things that God has already done. But the kicker to that is that, like, we haven't even seen half of the stuff that he wants to do. And so what does this reflection look like 5 years from now? What does this reflection look like 20 years from now? What kind of things are we going to be able to say that God has done because we didn't quit, because we didn't give up, because we accepted the responsibility to be leaders and to not be a mediocre church? What does our community look like because we didn't sit on the sidelines and we didn't isolate ourselves, but we did the uncomfortable thing of getting outside of our comfort zones and being intentional about connecting with people that weren't, the people that everybody else is trying to reach? Like, what does our testimony look like when we have grown to love our authentic selves and we stop being afraid and we find the courage and the boldness from being the people that God loved us enough to die for, and gave us his spirit so that we could participate in transformation? Like, what does that story look like?
Yes.
And as many things as we've seen God do in our story, we know that there are so many other things that God has already done in your story or that he wants to do in your story. But the thing about it is that if we don't demonstrate the faith, and not just in the big moments, but in the seemingly insignificant moments, in the little things, in the small opportunities, if we don't demonstrate the faith, we'll never see everything that God has for us.
Yeah.
But we're so grateful that he gives us the grace to be able to trust him in the big moments and the small moments, and that he literally takes all of it together and pushes us towards our destiny through it all. And so, we're grateful to have had the opportunity to be able to recount this story with you all and to share some, behind the scenes stuff. And we had to really speed through things tonight. I mean, there's so much more that we could talk about, but, there'll be, prayerfully other opportunities to be able to talk about that. But the thing that that at least I want you to know, and then you can share what you want people to know. The thing that I want you to know is that is two things. One, as great as God has already been, there is greater that we still have to see. And two, that if you are alive and breathing, then God desires to do some great things through your life. And we can't shortchange him by combating his declarations with other people's definitions of us. And I'm gonna shut up and go.
I will say, I looked at the comment in Deacon Wells, you are right. Yes, find the work. And everything that you do, it doesn't have to take place in the church. You don't always have to get recognized for things. And I think for tonight, for me, my takeaway is that in the journey that you're in, there's always places to minister to people. There's always places to serve. And in you doing your genuine thing and being your genuine self and loving yourself and doing what God has called you to do, you bless so many other people. And you might not see the fruit of it right then and there, but later on down the line, you see that fruit. And so I will leave that with you guys, just to trust the journey. and find ways to serve where you are already at. And then God will begin to open up the next door.
It's very rare that God will do anything if we ain't doing nothing. Mm-hmm. So do something and watch God work. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We are going to gather for a period of reflection. You're more than welcome to join us at sun.churchonpurpose.org. And we look forward to seeing you back on Sunday for worship as we wrap up our You Are Loved series. We love y'all. Have a great night. God bless you. Peace and grease.